What is going on, everybody? Welcome. This is From Screen to Shelf, a podcast about physical media, entertainment, and everything in between, from the silver screen to the palm of your hand. I am Will. I am here with my partners, Gabe and Chase. We're so happy to be here. We're super excited to get this thing going. It's been a while in the making, everybody. Well, many discussions and many months of planning, but we're super excited to finally get this off the ground. It means so much to us. And we hope that every one of you out there, everybody listening, can join us and come along with us on this journey. We got a lot planned for this. We're going to be doing live streams down the line, physical media unboxings, reviews. Like I said, everything in between, from physical media, entertainment, from the silver screen to the palm of your hand. Without further ado, before we move on here, I want to pass it over to Gabe and Chase. They're going to be talking about what's in store for today, and then we'll jump right into it. So, Gabe, if you want to
Yeah,
take the mantle, go right
guys.
ahead, bro.
I'm super stoked because today we're going to be talking about The Exorcist. It is probably one of my favorite films of all time. I've been waiting for this release for a minute. I've been waiting to watch it. I actually just saw it yesterday. So this is all kind of fresh for me. So I'm super stoked. This is one of my favorite films of all time. We're going to be talking about OG Exorcist 1973, the legacy of that film, the 50th anniversary 4K transfer, which just came out. And Chase, we also have some new Exorcist stuff coming up that I think you wanted to bring up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're also going to be talking about Exorcist Believer. You know, a lot of people are excited for it, and some people are kind of going into cautious waters about Exorcist Believer, especially since it's a planned trilogy. So we're going to give you some thoughts on the trailer. We're going to give you some thoughts on what we want, what we may like from the trailer, what we don't like. Just give you things off the top of the dome, and then go from there.
Yeah. So without further ado, I want to open it up with when was the first time you guys saw the original 1973 William Friedkin Exorcist movie? Do you guys remember?
Oh yeah, I remember. The
Vaguely,
biggest
but yeah.
I remember just because I kind of grew up in that age where like the scary maze game. You know, it was Reagan. That was like the thing that would make you, jump out of the chair and,
Hmm.
fall
Oh
backwards
yeah.
and stuff. So, mine's actually a little bit of a funny story. So, like I kept playing that game in high school. And so then I was like everybody was like, that's one of the scariest movies you'll ever see. And I was like, So then I literally just opened up a new tab, just watched it right there in class. I remember even just skipping through. I was like, "Where's the scary parts? Where's the scary parts?" And I finally just watched it. I didn't like the movie initially at all. I thought the movie was
Shame on you.
goofy.
No.
No, for sure. Like I definitely
Disgraceful.
appreciate it like a lot more now. Like especially I think the last 30 40 minutes is some of the greatest cinema ever, especially for horror. Even if you don't like horror, it's a great drama, right? On
Mhm.
subsequent rewatches, it grows on me a little bit more and a little bit less in certain aspects, but that was definitely my first time ever watching it, and I'll never forget it. Never.
What about you, Will?
Yeah, for me, I mean, Chase talked about high school. I was probably in high school the first time I saw it. Now, it's interesting. I should preface this with the fact that I started watching horror from a young age. Like, I remember my dad, and I've talked to you guys about this before. He had VHS tapes of different movies, Halloween being one of them. I think I saw that movie when I was 6. So I had already been exposed to many different types of movies, specifically in the horror genre. But there was the one movie that my parents never let me watch, and that was Exorcist. And that's all I really remember about it, is that every time I saw it in the store, or like it came up in conversations, like, no, you're not watching that. We'll watch this. You know, you can watch Halloween again for the seventh time, where there's nudity and babysitters getting stabbed, but you can't watch this possession movie. So I remember it was finally in high school when I was old enough to seek it out on my own, and we were talking about it earlier, but when Netflix first came into the scene and started with DVD rentals, I remember just getting it from Netflix as a DVD, and I'm pretty sure it was the theatrical cut on the DVD from what I remember,
Mhm.
looking back. But yeah, I remember watching it in high school and going, "Oh, okay, this is why they didn't want me to see this movie." Which makes sense, growing up in a
Mhm.
religious family. At the time, my mom was religious. Having grandparents that were super religious, especially on my mother's side of the family. I get why it was one of those movies where it's like, "Nah, we're gonna wait a little while." Like,
Mhm.
all this other stuff's acceptable for them, like, but we're gonna hold off on this. But yeah, it was probably around high school when I first watched it, and yeah, I don't remember how it impacted me initially, but over the years, watching it more and more and kind of coming to appreciate it. It definitely grew on me, and obviously now, being who I am, as an adult, I would say it's definitely up there as one of my favorite horror movies. But such a good character study. We're going to talk about that a little more as well. But yeah, such a great character study and a good drama. It's no secret why it was nominated for an Oscar and got the
Mhm.
attention that it did. But I yeah totally understand why it was so controversial. But yeah, that's what I remember. I was probably around high school the first time I saw it.
I think I was younger than you guys. So the first time I saw it, and my parents didn't know I had seen it. It was on TV. They were
Yeah.
out and about doing something. I think I was like 12 years old, and I was traumatized, dude. I
Yeah.
was like watching it on TV, and I was scared out of my mind, but I didn't want to stop watching it because I'm like I want to see what the hell's going on. So I watched the movie and I could not sleep for like the next few nights at all. Like I'd get up in the middle of the night. I'd fucking just stay up all night because I'm like freaking I'm just like freaking out. And I even remember having like nightmares about it. Um and I didn't watch it again until I think when the Blu-ray came out with the director's cut, which I think that was 2010. I'm not sure. So I was about like 20 or 21 years old, and I was kind of hesitant watching it again because I'm like, man, this movie freaked me the hell out all those years ago. So I dived back into it, and I loved it. I thought for me personally, I think what works so well for it because I do love dramas. I think it's just one of those rare films where you have this perfect blend of like horror and drama, and like you said, Will, like kind of like this character study too with like Father Karras, Father Marin. You have the stuff going on with Reagan and the mom. You have all the like kind of ideological stuff going on with like the religion and science and just all this like philosophical stuff going on with the film. And I'm like, there's not a lot of horror films that give you that much depth. And give you a good story and good performances with it. So that's how I first watched The Exorcist. I was freaked the fuck out as a kid. And I'm almost like having flashbacks, remembering waking up in the middle of the night, not being able to sleep. But it's a movie that, at least for me personally, it's stayed with me for a long time. And it's probably one of my top 10 favorite films. If I ever get down to actually doing a top 10 list, it probably might even be top five. So I've been super stoked for the release on the 4K Blu-ray. And also, I didn't know if you guys knew this. There's two dates I think where it's coming out theatrically. I think on October 1st and the 4th. I think it's coming out on Regal and Cinemark. They're doing some screenings of the original director's cut, which I think is also the 4K transfer as well. So for all the people out there that want to go see it in theaters, I think it's a good time to do it. Um, so that's the impact it's had on me. I think it's an incredible freaking movie, and I've been super stoked for the 4K transfer. We're not going to talk about the sequels though, right? We're not going to talk about Exorcist 2 and Exorcist 3.
You're
I
welcome
don't
to
think
bring.
we
It's
need to
fresh
talk
for
about
me.
2, but yeah, I mean, I remember 3 well enough. I can talk about 3. It's been a while since I've seen 2, man. Like it's been, and for good reason. But yeah,
Yeah.
3 is pretty fresh in my mind. I haven't. It was about a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago, when I watched the Scream Factory transfer. But yeah, I mean, that's up to you
I
guys.
pretend they just don't exist. So I don't know if we just want to skip. Unless Chase, I know you saw it recently because I know we're
Yeah.
doing this podcast. I mean, did you have any thoughts? Because you usually that was like your fresh first viewing, right?
Yeah.
He's almost face
Uh,
palming right now.
uh,
Yeah,
so I will
he's like,
just
"Oh, I
say
don't know if
this
I want
about
to go down this
Exorcist
road."
2. It if you're even remotely curious about, oh, is this like one of those movies that's so bad it's good? Can I find any enjoyment out of it? If somebody says that they did, they're lying to you. They are not being honest. They are
Damn.
not being truthful. There is nothing redeeming about that movie. Like, after watching that, I did not want to hear Pazuzu ever again in my life. Like, I am gonna just start just, oh my god. Like, it has to be name dropped every 30 seconds, which I get it. It explains some things, but not well. It tries to create substance out of nothing. And
Yeah.
I think the mystery of the first one, while it did explain some things, should have just been left there. But I will say Exorcist 3 is one of the best horror sequels that you wouldn't expect ever. Along the lines of Psycho 2, which I know we're not going down that route, but I also love, I believe his name is George C. Scott, if I'm right. I'm
George
probably,
C. Scott, yeah,
yeah, I love him in
fantastic
everything.
actor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will watch anything he's in, commercial, anything, you know. I love him. So yeah, Exorcist 2, don't. The curiosity killed the cat.
Don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And three is actually pretty decent. I think because three went back a little bit more into kind of it was a little bit more grounded back into the psychology of things. You know what I mean? Like whereas two was just it was like you smoke some mushrooms and
The
yeah,
only
you
thing I
just went all
remember
out.
about that is James Earl Jones dressed like a fucking he was like a bee or something. I don't remember.
Was that
It was
him?
just
Oh my
Yeah,
James Earl
god.
dude.
I'm pretty sure it
Yeah.
was James
Yeah.
Earl Jones. Yeah,
I
yeah.
think there's
Yeah, that
memes with
was.
him on like I gotta search them up later, but yeah, he was in that. But
The
yeah, the
locusts.
sequels. I mean, we're not gonna delve too much into it, guys. The sequels. I mean, the third one for sure. I think it's worthy of a watch.
For sure.
And then obviously we're gonna be talking about Exorcist Believer later on in the podcast. But the 4K 50th anniversary transfer just came out. I think you guys saw it before me, just because I've been so busy. But also we were talking a little bit before the podcast that we all watched different cuts. I'd watched the theatrical cut. Which one did you watch, Chase?
I watched the director's cut because I'd never seen it before. I
Oh, okay.
assumed I had never seen it before, and I guess I never did because there was some new stuff in there, like the spider walk scene and stuff like that, that I don't
Okay.
recall ever.
And Will, which one did you watch?
I watched the director's cut. I had planned on watching the theatrical as well. I just didn't get around to it. But yeah, the director's cut, I do remember seeing that a few years back. You know, the big differences are obviously the spider walk scene being
Hmm.
included. And then, you know, like we were talking about earlier, a few scenes, some more intimate dialogue scenes between the two priests, Father Karras and the other priest. And then at the end, with the detective, where he invites him out to the movie.
Hmm.
So yeah, just some bits of dialogue and small character interactions that were thrown in there. Those are the main differences that stick out to me. Just comparing the two, from what I remember.
Yeah.
But
It's
as far as the transfer, you know, I'd say 85-90% of it was pretty solid. You know, with the grain and lighting. I don't know if you guys want to touch on that as well from
I
your
think,
perspective, your
yeah, I
experience.
mean, like on my end, I would say like 80-90% of the movie look fantastic. I will say the opening is probably one of the best 4K
Oh,
openings I've
agreed.
seen in a while with like the Iraq desert and
Yep,
everything.
agree.
I was like, holy shit, this looks like it was filmed yesterday. Like
Yep,
with the HDR and just like the clarity, it was freaking
clean.
astounding. I don't think I will say I don't think nothing in the rest of the transfer like lived up to that. But I mean, the rest of the transfer was very solid. Like I said, 90% of the movie. I think the HDR obviously had a huge impact on the transfer. You definitely see an uptick with the resolution.
Mm.
Um, I think I mean, we're talking a little bit about before the podcast. We didn't want to delve into it too much, but I think there were some issues with I don't know. We use me and Will use the term smearing, but it's not like DNR smearing. It was like so like when Father Karras is in the subway, when he's in the hospital with his mom, the fluorescent lights, man. I don't know what it is. There was like this aura around like the fluorescent lights that I don't remember, and I have to watch the Blu-ray again, and the DVD. But like I don't remember that. It was like very prominent. It looked kind of smudgy, and
Mm.
it honestly threw me off a little bit.
So I kind of want to pose that question
Yeah,
because I've been thinking of that since we kind of talked a little bit. We've been saving it for this. But do you think maybe that's the HDR? Because we all love HDR. Nobody has complaints with
Yeah.
it
HDR,
could
but
be our
that
TVs too. I mean, I have an OLED, so it could
same.
just be the
Mhm.
settings on my
Same.
TV. I mean, I will say this, I've had this TV for almost a year now, and most of the stuff I've watched on it it's looked immaculate, you know?
Agreed.
Mhm.
Unless it's an issue with the transfer itself, and, like, I'll usually be one to go online and see what people are saying either before or after I've watched it, just to see if, like, the things that I'm thinking of, especially after the viewing, if other people are having those same issues or pointing out the same things, just so I know it's not me, just to kind of narrow things down. But I mean, the fact that Gabe and I kind of witnessed the same thing, I mean, yeah, it might have something to do with the HDR, like Dolby Vision. I'm not sure, but I mean, it didn't take away from the viewing experience. I think
Agreed.
overall it was still very enjoyable and obviously the best that
Mhm.
this film has looked. So
Yeah. I don't know. I'm gonna kind of echo what Will just said. I think I don't know. Like it didn't take me away from it. I definitely noticed it though. Like when I saw it, I was kind of like, oh, what's that? That's like
yeah,
not something I've used to because I've seen. I usually watch this film like once or twice a year, so
yeah.
it definitely stood out to me in that sense. But it didn't take me out of it.
Mm.
And I know we were talking about is it just because it's shot on film? Is it? But I mean, you have like 2001. You know what
Agreed.
I mean? With like a lot of like the fluorescent lights and stuff on the ship, and you don't see anything kind of like that. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's the contrast where in the subway scene it's kind of dark, and then you have like the only lighting was the fluorescent lights on top. So I don't know if that's what played into it, but it did take me out a little bit during those scenes. But I mean, like I said, that's me nitpicking. I haven't read the reviews for the transfer yet. I was actually going to beforehand, but I kind of want to just jump into the movie without any kind of preconceptions or anything like that, or because or like watch out for anything specifically, because I know sometimes people will read the reviews online and then they're watching the movie and they're looking out for it, and I don't know if that sometimes plays into bias or not. But
I
those are the
do
things
wanna
that stood
watch
out
it
to me.
again. Yeah, I
Yeah.
I wanna watch it again, Gabe, because you brought up the hospital scene, and I noticed it in the subway,
Hmm.
with the lighting, but I didn't notice it in the hospital scene, so I'm interested to watch it again. I'll probably try to pop it in again this week, and I'll keep an eye out on the hospital scene in particular just to see if I noticed the same thing, but I definitely saw it in the subway. That's where it stuck out to me, so
For sure. And even I will say, even like I think I got to watch it again, but like when Father Marin approaches the house too,
mm,
like when that iconic poster shot,
Yeah.
I don't
oh, yeah,
remember if that was kind of there too as well. I have
yeah.
to kind of watch it again.
It had extra
Um,
radiance to it because that's the most memorable scene in the movie to me outside of the most the exorcism, right?
mhm.
But yeah, I definitely noticed that the light radiated more. It had more luminance to it, but I wouldn't have said it
Yeah.
was smearing. But again, I also did watch the director's cut, which I doubt that affected it. I need to go back and watch the theatrical cut for sure, and just see if that flows a little bit better for me in
The
that aspect.
theatrical does flow like so, like in terms of just the plot itself, like the construction of the movie, the
Yeah.
theatrical does flow better. But then there are just some scenes I miss, kind of like what Will pointed out, like the discussion Father Karras and Marin have on the staircase, where I think Father Karras is like saying, "Why this girl?" You know what I mean? Why is it this girl that's like being victimized? And like you don't get that in theatrical. You don't get the ending scene with the detective and the priest. You don't get the spider walk scene. So there are some like really iconic scenes that are not in the theatrical, but at the same time, it does flow better. It's like you're in, you're out, you're done. Whereas some people kind of debate with the director's cut if it kind of drags a little bit because it's an extra 12 or 13 minutes long, I believe.
Yeah, it's like a dozen minutes, I think.
Yeah, so I kind of go back and forth with each one, to be honest with you. I typically watch the director's cut, and then sometimes I'll pop in the theatrical just to see. But I do need to watch the director's cut, 4K transfer. I haven't seen it yet. But overall, like I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, I think I'd be curious to see what the community says. I haven't read anything in terms of like Blu-ray.com or what people on the Discord server were saying or the Reddit users were saying, but I'd say I'd give it like 90% of it was very solid.
The sound mixing was incredible. I
Uh,
don't know what
yep.
sound system you guys have, but
Dolby
they
Atmos.
did a
Yeah.
yep, they did
Yeah.
such a good job with the mix on this. That's what stood out to me. That's what
Agreed.
enhanced it for me,
Hmm.
and that's why I don't necessarily mind, like, visually, some slight imperfections here and there, with the structure, like the grain structure that I didn't really I'm not gonna nitpick, but yeah, the soundtrack definitely and the score and just the Atmos mix, like, with the growling when Reagan's possessed and just those
Mm-hmm.
small things that, like, I
Hmm.
never remembered being as such an intricate part of the viewing experience. It really brought a lot of that stuff out, and that, I was just like,
Yeah.
"Wow, this sounds great," watched it in a dark room, and it just added to that experience,
Yeah.
especially during the possession scenes and the exorcism scenes.
I think that's where it was most prominent for sure. I think that's where I saw a lot of the Dolby Atmos utilization was, like when the cracks were kind of like, going on the
Yes.
ceiling and like,
Yeah,
like her levitating and like just that whole scene, like you really get the Dolby
yeah,
Atmos to shine. Because I was worried about Dolby Atmos in the sense of like, how do you utilize it in a film like this? Because there's a lot of talking in this film.
yeah.
And like kind of the same with Godfather. I mean, I don't remember if Godfather had a Dolby Atmos mix. I don't remember if you guys know. I think it
I
did.
don't know.
But
Yeah, it's
like, yeah, to me, it's like Godfather's like all dialogue. I'm like, how are you going to utilize Dolby
right.
Atmos? So just because something comes out in Dolby Atmos doesn't mean I get kind of like automatically hyped for it. This when they announced it for this one, I was expecting it, but I was kind of wondering how it would be utilized. But I thought they did a fantastic job, especially during the possession scene.
Yeah, that was like my biggest takeaway out of all of it. Cause like where I'm sitting right now, sometimes like my TV's angled in a way for me to be able to be here and then watch it also at the same time. And I
Mhm.
remember like I've seen the movie a lot of times, right? Outside of the director's cut parts and stuff like that that I'd immediately tune into. It's just like you said, really didn't know what to expect about the Atmos mix for the most part, right? Because it's just like you said, it's talking a lot. But that
Mhm.
last 30 to 40 minutes with the exorcism and everything like that, I'm glad you said that, Gabe, because the cracks in the wall gave me a jump scare. I don't know, I haven't been
Mhm.
jump scared in a while, but the way that it came in and it punched like extremely well, it had this sense of elevation on that Atmos mix that I haven't seen. I mean, of course, it's probably been used and stuff like that, and it's been utilized in that aspect because that's the whole point of a 7.1 channel audio system, right? For the highs and lows and the mids. But those cracks on the walls, whenever the bed was rising, and then the score and the way that it would rise with everything, it was just immaculate. And I would have to put that in the top 5 Atmos mix I've ever heard for sure.
Oh,
Especially
wow.
due to like, yeah, that last
Really?
30 minutes. It's mostly
Yeah.
because of the discoverability of things I've never heard before, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like those intricacies that add, like I just said, like I just got jump scared for the first time in years in a movie for something that I've
Mm.
seen so many times, and just the slight sounds, the slight cracks, the creaks, for them to kind of make me go like that, and it was like, whoa, what's going on? You know,
Yeah.
it just was so punchy. Like it was really good, and overall, like whole, is it the best Atmos mix? No, but I think it's the best utilization of Atmos, especially for during the
Yeah.
exorcism scene for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm
It's
glad
cool
that
to
they
hear
went
you
with it.
say that. Yeah. Yeah, I think they did a fantastic job. It's also a testament. I mean, a lot of people like to focus on visuals when they review, 4K and UHD transfers, and I don't. I mean, this could also be me, like my experience from what I read, but I don't see a lot of people talk about sound mixing that often.
It's
Um,
important.
but I think it's
Mhm.
incredibly important because again, it could make or break a movie in a situation like this, like with Chase, make a movie feel new again. It's like
Yep.
watching it for the first time because you're now hearing things that you never, not that you didn't hear them before, but now you can hear them so much more clearly.
And
You
more
know,
Yeah.
prominently for sure.
yeah. So that's super cool. But yeah, I overall I'm pretty impressed with this. I want to watch the Blu-ray again. I have it, the Steelbook somewhere. So I want to watch that at some point and just see uh if there's any differences with the sound, just to compare the two, because I always like doing that every now and then. So I'll probably try to do that. But I think I'm gonna watch the theatrical next when I have a moment,
Mhm.
and check that out. But overall, like so far, I'm pretty impressed with the work that they did. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
kudos
think
to
it's
Warner
solid.
Brothers for doing a decent job with that.
And I don't remember if I haven't looked this up surprisingly. I think Friedkin was involved way before he passed away with the transfer.
Yeah, and I did see that in the credits. It mentioned that. It said that he was involved with that process. So I mean, that's good to hear.
It's
Because
great.
I
Mhm.
was questioning that as well. Like, oh wait, he's passed away. I wonder how much of a hand he had in that. Because we heard of the whole thing with Bug just kind of you know falling off the map. So yeah, I'm just curious. I was curious, I should say, leading up to the release, like how much involvement he had with that transfer. So it
Yeah.
it
It,
looks like he
it's
was present
solid.
for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he, yeah, and I don't know. I mean, obviously he was involved in it, so he probably saw the final product. I think this is the best the film's gonna look. Like
Easily.
despite like kind of the small imperfections, and that's just nitpicking at that point. And like
Yeah.
what I'm glad you guys brought up the audio because sometimes I fall in that trap too. I'm so concerned with like how the movie's gonna look, and the Dolby Atmos is freaking incredible. I
Mm.
think I'm super happy and super stoked they utilized Atmos for this release because I honestly didn't know how they would, but they kind of proved me wrong. So, um, yeah, man, super. I'm super stoked that we finally got it on 4K, and that's another one down in my long list of
You've been asking for that for
long awaited.
years.
Oh, dude, and the next one is No Country for Old Men. Like
Oh,
that's
for
the one
sure.
I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
man.
waiting for that one for like, oh god, dude, that's gonna be like, I'm gonna
Just
be
as
so stoked
long.
when that one comes out. Yeah, I know, right? Well, There Will Be Blood. It sounds like that one kind of it didn't get officially released, I think, but it got put up on some French website or something like that. A listing came up, so I'm thinking that No Country should be soon, but we'll see.
So I'm
Yeah.
curious,
Usually, if
guys.
there's an international listing, it means that U.S. isn't far down the line. So we
Hmm.
usually get them at least within a year. Afterwards, it seems like at least as of late.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
So I know people are going to
super.
wonder about this real quick before we move on from this. What would we
Yeah.
give it out of 10? People are going to be curious because we talk about it, have some of these tiny nitpicks. What would be our overall score for this release? I
For
would
the,
say
the yeah for the
8.5 out
release.
of 10. That's what I'd give it.
You said 8.5?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
what I was
I
thinking as
haven't.
well.
Yeah, I would probably put it in that realm. I haven't looked at the extras. I haven't checked to see what's included on this disc because I'd be curious because they're coming out with like the special editions, which apparently have more extras. So I feel
Yeah.
like if you just got
Mm,
like the basic steelbook release,
There's
and
nothing.
granted, I there's nothing on it, so it's bare bones.
Commentaries.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I like that shit. Like I like all the extras. I'll sit there and watch a commentary or listen to the extras or watch the behind the scenes stuff, whatever they have on there. So for me, like obviously that's going to take away from the rating.
Hmm.
mhm,
I did pre-order one of the special editions. I think it comes out October 20th, off of Amazon. So when I get that in, I'll be stoked to kind of check that out. But yeah, I mean, without the extras, I'd probably give it like a 7, you know, but obviously with
Fair.
the extras, it's pretty much a complete package. I mean, as far as the transfer itself, like if I'm rating that out of 4 out of 5 or probably a 4.5 out of 5,
mhm.
I, I,
Yeah,
I think that's fair, you know?
yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
the
there's it.
sound mixing, I do 5 out of 5, hands down. Like,
Easy.
you know, I
Yeah,
loved it.
the sound mixing's perfect. I don't think it hit like 2001 kind of reference quality.
Not reference quality, but it
Yeah,
was up there.
but it's something I'm happy with. As like a longtime fan, I can definitely like like I'll pull out the 4K from here on forth. I'm not
Yeah.
I don't think I'm gonna be opening up the 2010 Blu-ray anytime soon.
Sell it.
Right.
So no, I'll keep it, man. I mean, I
Keep
keep
it,
I'm
keep
one of those weird hoarders, dude. I keep every
I
version of
agree.
every movie, and I don't know why I do that because like my shelves are just I'm losing shelving space right now. But yeah, I'm super stoked with the release. I'm super happy with it. And that kind of leads us into the upcoming Exorcist Believer movie, which I don't know if you guys want to talk about the trailer first, like impressions from the trailer first, and then maybe just kind of expectations of the movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Chase, did you want to take the lead on that, or I
It,
have my thoughts, but I'll let you go.
my thoughts are pretty simple. Even though that was where I opened up at the beginning of the podcast, I haven't seen the trailer. I avoid I
Oh
avoid
yeah, dude, I
trailers.
forget that you forget. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't watch trailers. I'll watch a teaser at most because it doesn't give much away. But typically, and we've all talked about this before in the server amongst ourselves and stuff. I just avoid trailers because there's been too many times that too much has been given away for me.
Mm,
Especially like I feel like a lot in that new Scream, the trailer was given away. And Halloween Kills specifically, a lot was given away in the trailer, and then also some can be like very misleading. So I just kind of avoid those. So I'm going in blind when I go to see Exorcist Believer, and that's kind of how I like to enjoy it. Like it's a horror movie. I'm gonna go. I watched this movie Slaughterhouse. If you guys have heard of that, I went to the theater to go see that.
mm.
Didn't even watch the trailer. I just said that sounds like the dumbest movie I can go watch right now, so I'm gonna go watch it.
Slaughterhouse, right? I have that pre-ordered, the
Yeah,
Blu-ray.
it was decent. I mean, it wasn't.
Yeah,
Keep your expectations to the ground, and you will be blown
yeah,
away. So
yeah.
yeah,
I'm probably gonna return it. But
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
have you seen?
it's. Oh,
We
go
should
ahead,
do
Will.
it. We should. No, I was just gonna say off on an off note. We should just do a podcast on horrible like pun horror movies because they're. I think there's one called Caddy Hack that's out as well. If anybody's interested,
That sounds
I'm
great.
being completely serious.
Oh man.
Anyway,
But yeah, I mean, the trailer. I don't know, man. I wish I had the willpower that you do, Chase. Let's just say that. I wish I could like,
I could be a Green Lantern.
not. I wish I could like I hear like oh Exorcist trailers out like I'm automatically just seeing it. But I mean, interestingly enough though, I saw the first trailer when Oppenheimer came out. I think that's when they released the first trailer. So that was kind of it.
yep.
Just kind of took me
Yeah.
off guard. Um, and I mean I think that it's a good blend of something new, but also kind of keeping faith to the original, at least from what I've seen so far. Um, I like at least from what the trailers have shown, the design that teaser poster with the two girls on it is freaking phenomenal, at least in my opinion. I think it's like fucking
Mm.
horrifying. Um, and just I think it's I'm happy they're kind of doing something new with it, but also just kind of keeping with the original. So um, the trailers have been awesome for me, at least on my end. I don't know. Will, have you seen the trailers for it?
I've seen the first one. I've been refraining from the second one just because I'm kind of like 50% in Chase's court where I don't like to watch too much, and you know, I was very let down by the Halloween Kills trailer.
Mm,
Um, and that pretty much gave that movie away. And also being a Blumhouse release, I'm trying to like be wary of that. So I don't want to spoil too much, but I did watch the first trailer, and it was okay. There was nothing that really stood out about it other than like the flash photography at the end. I really liked that. That was probably the
Hmm.
the best thing. I think that was probably, yeah, I'd say that's my favorite thing about it. I think they did a good job with that. It really kind of gave you that vibe, it like harkening back to the original um, trailer for the '73 film, where they mention that things are happening to a small girl, in this apartment, and it shows the demon and all that, and they employ a similar technique with that. So that was a nice callback to that. Yeah, it definitely has that modern look to it, which is expected. But yeah, I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic, and I say that because David Gordon Green obviously directed the more recent Halloween films, which have been very I've been vocal about how I feel about that trilogy being a mixed bag, for me. So yeah, I'm just I have hopes for this movie. I want it to do really well. Obviously, I want any movie to succeed. But yeah, I'm just interested to see how they handle this with Blumhouse being behind the wheel. I think David Gordon Green can pull it off. I was talking to Chase about this earlier. George Washington, I think he directed that. That's a fantastic movie.
Hmm.
He does really well with material that's closer to what The Exorcist is. So, like with Halloween, my favorite scenes, and I think the thing that stood out to me with Halloween was the interaction with the characters. We can use Halloween Ends as an example, and when you guys hear me talk about these movies, I'm gonna reference Halloween a lot,
Yeah.
um, just because
It's
the
the
way
first
that they're
example.
going about yeah, but the way that they're going about these films is literally the same as far as their release strategy, it's the same way they went about releasing Halloween, which, can be a good thing or it can be a fallback. I don't know. Obviously, that remains to be seen. But I think what I liked so much about Halloween Ends was that it was such a character-focused story. Now, obviously, that movie's very polarizing in itself, for obvious reasons. But I think in terms of the character study that we see in Halloween Ends, I think David Gordon Green did a good job with that. And that's why I have optimism for this, because obviously, as we mentioned, Exorcist is a much more character-driven story. It's not plot-driven. So if that's anything to go by, then that leaves me hopeful because I think that's good work. With the Michael story aside, if you look at Halloween Ends and look at the work that David Gordon Green did with the Corey Cunningham story arc, I think if he approaches this film in the same way that he did that, I think we're in for something that's going to be you know above average, which is good, right?
Hmm.
I just think it's important to hamper expectations to a degree where this isn't going to be the original. It's just not. And I think if we go into it with an open mind and just that idea that yeah, okay, as long as it's good, if it's solid, then that's a win for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Like if it's a solid movie, um, then I think that's something that everybody can be happy about. So that's kind of where I stand on it. But from the trailer, yeah, I mean the trailer was okay. I really like the flash photography stuff at the end. Like I said, that's what really caught my eye.
Hmm.
So
And that could be
that's what
kind of
intrigued
like
me.
what Chase said. I mean, sometimes they put stuff in these trailers, and that might not even end up in the final cut of the movie. You know what I mean?
We'll
Which
Hmm.
see.
sucks because
Yeah,
it's like it garners this kind of expectation, and then when you see the movie, it's like, well, okay, that
yeah,
didn't happen.
yeah.
It's hard not to compare, kind of like what you were saying, Will, the Halloween trilogy, because it's pretty much the same like release format, right? You have like this
Hmm.
classic film. You're doing kind of like a spiritual, like I mean, actually, it's a direct sequel, technically
They're
speaking.
saying
You know
it's
what I mean?
yeah. They've come out and said it's a direct sequel to the
Yeah.
first film.
So
So
they're negating all
they've
the other installments.
yep. And by saying that, they've also put themselves in that category. So it's like okay, well now the bar is set, so to speak. So it's a matter of them meeting that. So
And I at least and Chase and I have talked about the Halloween trilogy. And it's
yeah,
impossible not to talk about Exorcist Believer without mentioning the Halloween trilogy just because of
yeah,
Green. But I think it's it, I think he's great at plot and like what you said, kind of character development. Will I think like I loved the first one, the 2018 Halloween release. Like that was my favorite one out of all three installments, just because I think it really focused down on the psychology of the characters, and also showing
Mhm.
kind of like what trauma did to someone, like, decades down the line. And I was super into that one, but I think the trilogy kind of started losing me with Kills, with the whole kind of, and I understand what he was trying to do, and I appreciate what he was trying to do, but kind of the whole community aspect of everything, I think
Yeah.
took away from the more intimate psychological character development between the characters. And I think Chase, correct me if I'm wrong, you liked Halloween Kills more than Halloween Ends, right?
No, so like I
Or
have a completely actually I think Will and I somewhat agree. We're like halfway in agreement about that trilogy. I agree completely about David, or, the script writing, the directing. I did not like 2018 at all. I really didn't. I thought it
mm,
was like completely lame. I know that's a hot take out there. I loved Kills, but purely because when I go in for a slasher, I'm not expecting a story, right? I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
like at least super plot driven, right? Like I don't go
mhm,
watch Friday the 13th to get into the lore of it. I don't go and watch Halloween, the original one, or even Season of the Witch to get into this deep dive in story, right? I'm there to see somebody just go crazy with a
yeah,
butcher knife or whatever their tool of choice is. Just like Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a great example of that. There's substance to it, but there's not too much to it, right?
mhm,
Kills I liked because he is just an elite assassin in Halloween Kills. Like that opening intro with the firefighters, he just goes crazy. I same complaint, the community aspect. I liked it. I just think that they went about it too hardcore, which
Mm.
also leads me to
yeah,
Ends. I love that one, but there's only one complaint I have, which I've put into the server, and we've talked about this one as well before. Where I just, if they had just simply, what was his name, Corey, the guy that they make you want to
mhm,
care about in Halloween Ends, had it simply just been Laurie's granddaughter's boyfriend that was in the first two installments, that was wearing the dress in the first couple too, that would have been so much more believable. The whole nine, absolutely everything about it would have been so much better done had you just, even if you still kept everything the same, just changed the aspect of the story to that guy. I think it would have made more sense because you had a character, instead of just giving me a new person to worry about. Which that's kind of my worry about this trilogy. I'm gonna go see all of them. I just don't
mhm,
want it to be changed up like a Neapolitan ice cream style where I'm getting three different flavors instead of some
Mm.
kind of consistent flavor across the board. I like it when it changes up, but not when it's a trilogy, right?
That's a perfect way to say it. What you
yeah,
just said was, that's how I would describe the Halloween trilogy. 2018 is definitely, as Gabe was saying, it's the most cohesive
Mm-hmm.
of all of
mhm,
them. And
Yeah,
then you have Kills, which is just this like rampant, like, let's give Michael some PCP and let him loose, and he just goes crazy. And then you have Ends, which is kind of such this great character story that comes out of left field and just in a way unexpected. And it's like, wow, this is great. And then it's like, well, wait, when Michael shows up, it kind of takes away from that
agreed.
intimacy that they set up
mhm,
with Corey. But there's another thing you said that I think is important. You talked about when they opened it up to make it more of a, like, Halloween Kills for that matter, when they made it more of a community driven film where it's like, okay, now the whole town is involved. I think in a sense that takes away from the horror of it. I think it takes away from the intimacy of what was so scary about that original film. And we don't want to talk about Halloween too much, but I think it's important to look at that and compare it with The Exorcist, because the original Exorcist, the horror that comes from that is it's an intimate type of horror. It's a
Agreed.
mother and her relationship with her daughter behind closed doors. Nobody else
mhm,
knows that this is happening other than the people that are in their close circle. And that's what's so scary about it, is that it's contained. Um, I'm curious how they're going to make three Exorcist films, because I have a feeling they're going to want to experiment creatively, which I'm all for.
mhm,
Agreed.
It's just a matter of whether or not I think they can execute those ideas in a way without making it too big. Because I think the problem with Kills is they elevated the stakes, so to speak, but it was such a large scale movie in terms of that whole community aspect and the mob mentality tropes that were present throughout. I think it kind of took away from what could have been a decent horror film, and I'm worried that they try to do something like that with The Exorcist, because The Exorcist just isn't that movie. It's just it's it's not it's hard to show a possession film or to make a possession film with that kind of framework. So, I want them to be creative and try new things, of course, I don't want them to reach too high to a point where it's like, okay, like what are we gonna have, a possession film where like the whole town gets involved? I can't see something like that working out. I just think for a movie of this caliber, like The Exorcist, with that kind of story, um, I just think that works so much better on an intimate level,
I agree
as opposed to
100%.
kind of opening it up.
I
Yeah,
think, just bringing this up because I saw this a few days ago. Actually, there was a video that David Gordon Green posted, or I think it was some, maybe some other company. They were reviewing the trailer, and he was kind of stopping the trailer, talking about it, stopping the trailer, talking about it.
yeah,
And I think he might be bringing that community aspect into it because he talked about like the church and the whole community kind of having different beliefs in terms of not only just
mm,
religion but also science and all that stuff. So I don't know how much he's going to branch out and do that. I do think I agree with you 100% in the sense like for it to work, it needs to remain kind of this like intimate, kind of almost claustrophobic kind of feel.
Yep.
Because like I think the why the original worked so well was because you felt like the mom, like you said, it was happening behind closed doors, but also like she was alone. Like she didn't have anyone to help her. She went to all these doctors, she went to all these professionals, and everyone's like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. And she's alone. She has no one to turn to. And I think that makes it kind of really terrifying. You
Yep.
know what I mean? So it, I'm hoping they play off of that. I think they could probably play off of it with Believer. I'm concerned about any additional installments after that because I don't know how you can take the like what you guys said, it's character driven story. The plot is really just the possession.
yeah,
I don't know how you can kind of spread that out over three films. I think you have enough going the first installment with Believer to bring. I feel like shit. I don't remember the actress's name. Reagan's mother's in Believer. Um, she's there. You have enough going on with that. But I don't know what you're gonna do after
Oh,
Believer.
they have returning cast from the original.
Ellen Burstyn is back as
Mhm.
Reagan's mother.
No
Yeah.
Linda Blair as of right now.
Linda Blair, as of now, from what I've read, is that Linda Blair is kind of in the same way that Nick Castle was kind of there with Halloween. He was just kind of involved as kind of like blessing and giving his blessing and just being there as a reference
Hmm.
and regarding consulting. So
Okay.
Nick Castle and John Carpenter were heavily involved on set during the making of Halloween 18 specifically to kick that off. Nick Castle was kind of there as a reference, to go to for especially for James Jude Courtney. So I'm assuming Linda Blair is kind of serving that same purpose. She's kind of there as kind of an arbiter of like, okay, well, this is how I approached it. Maybe for the girls that are being possessed in this film, I think she's just there doing a lot of consulting work. Now, whether or not she makes an appearance in any of the subsequent films is another story. That's up for
Mhm.
debate. I think it was Chase. You mentioned earlier that she's been hesitant to come back
Yeah.
do another film because of some not so pleasant experiences she had during the making of the 1973 film. So yeah, I don't really know what her involvement's going to be moving forward, but as of now, I think she's there as a consultant and just to kind of give her blessing to what it is that they're doing with this movie. From what
Green
I
did
from what I know.
Green did talk about it. I think there in that YouTube clip where he's going over the trailer, he brought up Linda Blair, and I think he
Mhm.
said kind of what you said. Well, she was there to consult, but also he said that she was also there to provide a kind of like emotional support for the girls, just because when
Okay.
she was doing the original, I think during the original they had like a psychologist there with her, just because a lot of
Yeah.
the stuff was like so dark.
Mm.
So she's kind of filling in that role to kind of give some emotional support to these girls, saying, you know what, this is what I went through. This is kind of how I did this, and just kind of filtering some of that stuff for them.
Mm.
So she was involved in the sense of like being a consultant, but I don't think she's showing up in the movie
Yeah.
without giving too many spoilers away because they kind of mentioned something in the second trailer. So um, yeah, you have some of the original cast, right? At least the mom's going to be in it, but I don't know what else you have in terms of doing a second or third installment. I think you have enough juice to do the Exorcist Believer. After that, I become kind of very skeptical unless they knock it out of the park with the first one. But honestly, with Halloween, that's how I felt with 2018, I was like, this is freaking amazing. And then, at least personally for me, when I saw Kills, I was like super let down. I just did
Yeah.
not like the community. It was just kind of like what Will said. I think that they raised the stakes too much. It didn't become kind of this like, intimate, kind of scary, this is happening in my house or, corner of my street kind of deal. It was like the whole community's involved. You have a protest, it was just too many things going on. And then the third one, I think that they were doing great with the whole, his name's Corey, I think, right?
Corey
Hmm.
Corey Cunningham.
Yep.
Yeah.
I loved that whole thing at the beginning where he's like, oh, like he's, trying to kind of, like you said, garner empathy for this guy. But then you also have the Mike Myers part, and it just didn't blend well together. I think the Corey thing would have been a great standalone story on its own.
Agreed.
Um, but I mean, on my end, I think it would have been, Halloween 2018 was the top one, then Ends, and then Kills was my ranking. But that is what I'm worried about for Exorcist. I think that they can do a decent job with Exorcist Believer. And I don't know. I think that the second one's called Deceiver.
Deceiver. Yeah.
Deceiver. So I'm like, is he gonna possess like someone else, or I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, what do you do with that?
Do you think they might
It's
go like
it's
a three part, like part one, part two, part three, instead of it feeling individualized? Because technically Halloween Kills is part two, right? Because it picks
it
up
is.
very
Yeah.
Hmm.
shortly, like what, minutes after?
It's the
Um,
same night.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yep, yeah, you're right. It's the same exact night. So that's where I'm going to be interested in is
Mm.
how it goes between each other, because that's going to be the biggest thing. Do you have like a three movie story to tell me, or do you have three different stories to tell me? You know,
Mm.
that's really going to
One
be
of the
like the
big
drawing
things
point.
with Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, one of the big things with Kills, because I was thinking about this as Gabe was talking about it, one of the big draws for fans of the franchise for Kills was the fact that they brought back some of those legacy characters. And like Ellen Burstyn and Linda Blair are really, as far as The Exorcist is concerned, they're really the only two people you can bring back and kind of make that work.
Yeah.
They don't have as much to play with in terms of bringing characters back or bringing the original cast back with The Exorcist as they do with the Halloween films. And I feel like the legacy characters in Halloween Kills were throwaways. You know,
Hmm.
I'm not necessarily a fan of what they did with those characters. So
Same.
yeah, I have no idea what they're gonna do in regards to this trilogy. But I want to ask you guys a question because we talked about how we think David Gordon Green, what he could do right and what he could potentially not be able to pull off. But what do you guys think about Blumhouse being behind it as well? Because I think I was talking with Chase about it, and Gabe, I want to get your thoughts on this because
Hmm.
I'd be interested to know what you think. When I look at Exorcist, it's a much more psychological, character focused, which we talked about. It's more of a cerebral type of film. And I was thinking about it and I said, a studio like A24 would, I think,
Yeah.
if A24 was putting this out, that would be something that
Mm,
would like get my attention.
Hmm.
Because to me, and I don't want to discredit Blumhouse, they've done incredible things. They're known for making movies on shoestring budgets and making huge returns.
Hmm.
But as far as the content they put out, Blumhouse is more of almost an everyman's kind of studio. They put out more mainstream films, whereas A24 tends to focus on more intimate and more, mind bending, kind of cerebral, kind of, out of left field type of movies. Right. And I'm not discrediting Blumhouse at all. Like I said, Blumhouse has their place um, in the genre. I just don't know if The Exorcist is ideal for the type of movies that Blumhouse, if that story coincides with a lot of the stuff that Blumhouse is used to putting out. I was just curious what you guys thought about that too.
Chase, you want to hop on that one first, or that's a lot to, I mean,
It's a
'cause, yeah,
loaded
I got to think
question, but
about it.
it's
yeah.
just Blumhouse again. When you look at them, the movies that they put out are much more like everyman, like mainstream. Whereas
Hmm.
A24 is known for I guess some people would call it highbrow horror. But
Hmm.
when I look at Exorcist, like Exorcist is highbrow horror.
Yeah,
Like
it's
it
definitely
is
like
elevated.
elevated horror.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I would say like in the aspect of what they have put out for Blumhouse, um, I mean, there's not a whole lot that like I was googling this while we were or while you were asking that question. I was like, man, what great have they put out? Because I remember really being happy when I see that production studio come up, like
Hmm.
before rolling a movie at
Yeah.
one point, right? So really, what I'm seeing is Insidious, based on the list I'm looking at, which I thought was Sony. I did not know that was Blumhouse. The Purge. They also did Get Out,
Yeah.
and they continue to do. Oh, they did Happy Death Day. That was what got my attention from them because that was
Hmm.
completely original, or it felt original, and that
Yeah.
personally is one of my favorite PG-13 horror movies. I just think it's really fun, really goofy, and really good.
Hmm.
Yeah.
A24 is like the art house studio for me. I will go watch anything with their logo on it. Now, do they always hit? No, of course not. Not
Hmm.
every studio has a stinker every now and then for sure, right?
Mm.
But A24 out of any studio out there, I would trust them with anything, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, for Exorcist, when it comes to more intimate details and stuff like that, I do agree. I do think A24 would be the better place because A24 literally will make a movie and doesn't care. Like, let's say they put $2 million in production value into it, including marketing and everything. That's its entire budget. They just hope for four, get that back. Cool.
Hmm.
We'll make another one. We don't care.
Mm.
Everything,
Yeah.
everywhere, all at once didn't make an extreme amount of money, but compared to the budget that was entailed with it, because they only had four design video effects coordinators on that. If you guys didn't know, that is
Mm.
wild for that entire
Really?
movie.
Yeah.
Four
That's crazy.
is I know it was in the single digits. I'm pretty sure it was 4 to 5, but
Wow.
like they will pump it out, and whenever they make 50 million off a $2 million budget, they're like, cool, we're
Mhm.
happy.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next thing. They aren't all about the big corporate shareholders, budgets, this and that. Of course, every business exists to make
Make
sales,
money.
right? But I think A24 cares about the craft, right?
Mm.
Now that's not to say Blumhouse doesn't, right? I don't want to take that away from any studio out there because people put love, sweat, and tears into all of these movies. But I would trust A24 with much more with something like this. Absolutely.
And I
Mm.
think A24. I mean, well, and I don't think they would take something like this because I think they're just focused on
Yeah.
original content. But if they did take something like this, I think that they would, kind of like what Chase was saying, I think they would focus a little bit more on the craft. I think that you would get something like, which is a big deal for me at least, like you'd get something like, Exorcist Believer like shot on film. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they would actually like go to those lengths to say like we want to try to get this atmosphere as, as accurately as possible. I would totally like if it was A24, I'd be even more excited. Not, and I'm not taking anything away from Blumhouse because I've loved a lot of their releases. It's kind of like what you said, Will, where they definitely have their own ground in horror, right? Like they definitely do their own thing, and I love a lot of their releases, kind of like some of the ones that Chase was listing.
Mm.
What was it called? Happy Death Day, right?
Oh, I love that
Happy Death
movie.
Day.
I love Happy Death Day. Love Get Out. Get Out's one of my favorite horror movies in the past few years. Black Phone. Black Phone is an interesting one because I feel like that one kind of, in a
Oh,
way,
they
could
did
almost
that?
be like A24. I think they did, right?
Yeah.
Or I could
Yeah,
be
you're
wrong.
right.
Did
I
they?
didn't I
Yeah.
didn't go that far down the list. I stopped at
Yeah, Black
2019.
Phone. So they I mean Blumhouse is awesome. I mean I do get stoked when I see some Blumhouse releases. So I just don't know, and I haven't looked at a lot of the technical specifications because I get that nerdy. I don't think it was shot on film. I think it was shot on digital, which to me is I'm really big on that. I know most people probably don't care.
Mm.
But just little things like that I think really help kind of give you a good foundation to kind of go off of the first one. I think when you're trying to do something like The Exorcist, I think you really need to focus on even those small, tiny little nitpick technical aspects. But at the
Yeah.
same time, Blumhouse does have filmmakers and writers that I think that are passionate about horror. Like they do care about horror. Like they look at something like The Exorcist and they say, how can we honor this the best way possible? And I think
Right.
David Gordon Green, I think he absolutely 100% cares and wants to be as faithful as possible. So I think the intent is there for sure. I do think something like A24 would have been very interesting to see, even though I know they don't do anything like that. But um, man, now I'm getting like kind of this like dream that's never going to happen in A24.
A what if episode. We'll do it.
Oh man,
Create our own
that would be
scripts.
freaking amazing.
Well, the reason I asked you guys that question is because I don't know if you guys have heard that Robert Eggers is involved with a Nosferatu remake.
Oh,
And
Oh,
yes.
I'd heard about that. Yeah.
yeah, so
Yes.
there's been banter online as to whether or not because A24 has worked so closely with him in the past on those other films, whether or not
Mm.
they would end up picking that up and distributing that. So that's why I asked that question.
Mm.
Because I think if they did end up doing that in that situation, that would be a first for them. Because I don't believe they've put out anything that has any connection to an existing franchise or an
Yeah.
existing property. I think, like Gabe was saying, it's been mostly they stick to mostly original work. So that kind of got me thinking, like, oh, it'd be crazy, like in an alternate universe, like what if a what if scenario if they took on something like The Exorcist.
Oh
So
man, that would have
Yeah.
been awesome.
I mean, I guess like to Gabe's point, Nosferatu is definitely. I mean, to us, we appreciate the finest of cinema. We all have our flavors and taste. But if you
yeah.
go out on, if I were to walk outside right now and ask a random
Oh,
person,
dude.
hey, you know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
They're gonna know
Yeah.
what The Exorcist is, but they're gonna look at me like I'm the
Yeah.
craziest person that crossed their life that day. If I'm like, hey, have you heard of Nosferatu? And they're gonna,
Yeah.
Mhm.
they're just gonna kind of look at me cross-eyed probably.
Yeah.
So as much as like I am so excited for that because I'm pretty sure there's that Willem Dafoe one. That one I really like. It's
Mm.
been probably a decade since I've seen that one, but I loved that whenever I
Mhm.
watched it. The original
Yeah.
still holds a special place. I mean, I
Mhm.
would trust A24 with most things. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, to come full circle, like I think the best thing Blumhouse has put out outside of any of the Jordan Peele movies that they put out was Megan came out this year and Black Phone last
Yeah.
year. So they still do
Yeah.
very solid, but I also feel like it's Scott Derrickson. How can you go wrong with the Black
Yeah.
Mhm.
Phone? Like he did
Yeah.
Sinister. You give him
Yeah.
anything, just give him the money, he's gonna make something great. Which to the same point, I have a lot of faith in him. David Gordon Green to get this done because you can feel the passion, like
Mhm.
people that said that he hated Halloween. I remember that being something whenever Halloween Ends happened. Everyone's like, he must hate
Really?
Halloween. What? It was just some
Well,
comments. I'm not going to sit here and like create a
Yeah.
news article and cherry pick 2 like tweets and try to say, hey, here's what everybody's saying, the critics' consensus. I just remember
yeah.
saying that, seeing that, and I just feel like that's harsh to put on somebody because for them to even dedicate 3 films, they have to have some damn passion.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
I'd be curious just to, like you guys said, to see what it is. I mean, I was trying to look up what camera was used just now to see it, and that's the most I've seen of Exorcist Believer. I didn't know it was 2 girls that it's gonna be. So
Yeah.
that's exciting. I mean, I'm a little bit more excited now. Yeah, I
Yeah.
should
No, that's
probably
good.
start looking up some stills, but I was just trying to
I
find the
think
camera used.
it's important to say too, we all want this movie to be good.
Oh,
Mhm.
absolutely.
I think I'm not asking. No, none of us at least are asking because, and this is the problem. I was talking to Chase about this earlier, Gabe. Is that there's a subset of people out there, especially in the horror community, that if it's not the greatest thing, God's gift to horror cinema, it's trash, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like
No.
those are that's just the two extremes. So you're gonna have people like that out there who are gonna throw shit at this movie just for the sake of doing so. And whether it's because they have a bad taste in their mouths from Halloween Ends or whatever the case may be,
Mhm.
there's already people out there who have most likely made up their minds about this
Yeah.
because of how they think or how they deem, however they view, Green's handling of the Halloween trilogy. Their pitchforks are ready. They're already ready to go.
Mhm.
So I think it's important that we just stay optimistic. But I mean, I don't think any of us we don't want this movie to fail. We want the movie to be good. I want it to be good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think
Absolutely.
if this movie is solid, even if it's solid,
I'll be
that's still
happy.
great. That's still
Well,
good.
that's what we want, right? Like, I
Yeah.
think a
Yeah.
solid movie, because like none of us are going into this thinking it's going to be 1973 Exorcist. Like
No,
we
Right.
we know
it's
that,
too high
right?
of a
It's
bar.
yeah, too high of a bar. So like what we want is kind of like, I mean, to use a weird analogy, like I mean, with comic book movies, like the Batman, right? Like that came out and everyone was comparing it to the Dark Knight, and it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people came out saying they liked it better than Dark Knight. I personally still like the Dark Knight better, but it was a solid, good movie. Like I
Yeah.
walked out of that movie like, hell yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
And I want the same thing with this. I know it's not going to reach Exorcist level, but I want to walk out saying, okay, they did something different. I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. And let's see where they go from there. But yeah, we don't want this film to fail. I don't think we want any film to fail, especially with like the whole atmosphere with, the box office right now and the strikes. Like you need movies out there to financially succeed, or else we're not going to get movies like this anymore.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
It's definitely going to make money. I think the time of year that it's coming out, October 6th, it's
Perfect.
spooky season. Everyone's going to want to go out and watch a horror movie.
But
It's
Taylor
going to make
Swift
a lot
might
of money.
ruin it.
Nah,
Right, because
I'm not
this
worried about
was scheduled for October 13th, the Friday
the
the
13th.
13th, right? Which was like a
Yeah.
perfect release day. And
Yeah.
then the freaking Taylor Swift tour movie is like, yeah, we're gonna come out October 13th.
Yeah.
So they bumped it up to October 6th, and I'm like, man, for Exorcist to actually like say, okay, we're gonna move our
Yeah.
release date because of Taylor Swift, I'm like, holy shit.
I was
Intimidating.
I was
Yeah,
laughing at that though, because I picture like, Jason Blum in the office, like, arguing over the phone with somebody, like, why the fuck, like, of
yeah.
course they had to release it on the 13th. Now we got to move all our shit up a week. It's funny that they moved it though, because it's obviously Taylor Swift is that impactful
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess
in the
so. I
industry.
mean, I'm not a hater. I mean, if people like Taylor Swift, they like Taylor Swift. I just don't
Yeah.
get like how it's this cultural.
The
I mean, it's
um,
Swifties,
like
bro. They're
yeah.
coming. They're
Oppenheimer versus Barbie. They both succeeded, and they both
Yeah.
came out the same day. Why couldn't like those are two different movies? Like
Yeah.
Barbie is still a
Yeah.
big budget, appeal
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
it's a big name. You have Christopher Nolan, it's a big name. So you have two big names. Just like they said,
Yeah.
why can't you go see it both? One is literally catered to one type of audience. Exorcist,
Mhm.
Right.
regardless, like we've said, if you're into horror or drama, if you're a
Mhm.
hardcore Exorcist fan, you're gonna go see it. Even if you're a drama fanatic and you just have respect
Mhm.
for Exorcist, you're probably gonna go see it out of curiosity. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
go see that Taylor Swift movie out of curiosity because I know I'm gonna
I'm
just
not.
get Taylor Swift. You know what I mean?
Those are
Yeah.
for fans of Taylor Swift. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, her fans are gonna those are for music fans and just
Yeah.
her fan base specifically. I don't think every person is gonna wake up that day and go, "Yeah, you know what? It's October, it's Halloween season, fall is here. I'm gonna go watch the Taylor Swift movie tonight." Like, no, I wanna
I
see
mean, it's
fucking horror, dude. I
I
wanna
will
see
say
some
though, dude, it's
possession.
selling out. Like apparently I saw some news article. They have like 30 million in pre-sale tickets or some shit like that, which
Yeah,
is
well,
freaking
she's huge.
mind-blowing.
She's
Yeah.
big.
All right, guys.
But
So
I
when are
don't
we
know.
getting
Do you guys know
ours?
do you guys know do you guys know the budget real quick? I know we're kind of coming to an end, but like do you guys know the budget for Believer?
I had it
What
up
because
on my
I'm
IMDb just a minute ago. I can tell you.
I mean, because I'm guessing they're probably gonna get like a. I mean, I'm hoping it's higher. I mean, in this
They're
kind of
looking at,
climate,
like I
30
think they're
million
looking
maybe.
at they're looking at 30 to 40 million opening weekend. That's what they're hoping for right now, um,
Mm-hmm.
for the opening. Now I don't know what the
63
budget.
million.
Yeah.
63 million budget.
That's a
Okay.
lot. That's a
Yeah, I
lot.
mean I mean for like a very kind of intimate horror film like this, so they're looking at what? I mean, they need like 100, like
200 to
maybe
make
80
money.
million, yeah, 180, 200 million to clear and make profit, which is, uh, that's gonna be
It's
that's gonna be
intimidating.
tough in this climate, man. I don't know if I know we're stoked for Halloween. We're stoked to see horror films this month, but I
Yeah.
don't. With the changing climate, and maybe this whole other podcast episode, but I don't know how many people. Honestly, I haven't been getting. At least for me, I'm super stoked for it. I haven't been getting this vibe from everyone else, like even film fanatics. They're like, "Yeah, fuck yeah, I'm gonna go see Exorcist opening week."
Yeah, I don't see a lot of people talking about it. The hype for Halloween 2018, I remember more people reacting to that. There was more
Hmm.
hype around that, and I think only because I mean, I guess you could say the same for this franchise though. Like with Halloween, there hadn't been a Halloween movie in a long time. The last ones were Rob Zombie's remakes. Well, I should
Hmm.
say remake, and then subsequent Halloween 2, which kind of went off into his own. He went into left field with that one.
Yeah.
So, there hadn't been a solid Halloween movie in a long time, and I think it was just the right time to put it out. And obviously, it was the 50th, not the 50th, but for Halloween, it was the 40th anniversary. But I
Hmm.
think everything's kind of lined up for this, with the 50th anniversary being this year. Hard to believe it's been that long, but I don't know. I think it's going to do decent. Hopefully, it has a good opening weekend, for the sake of the business aspect of it, because the following weekend, I feel like it's probably going to lose out to the Taylor Swift thing, I would assume,
Yeah.
with ticket sales, with pre-sales being so high for that.
I want to throw this out there.
Yeah.
Exorcist, with this information that I'm going to give you, Exorcist better be able to do $500 million. So The Nun 2 had a budget of $38 million, and that's the worst movie I've seen this year. It has year to date made $202 million. Why?
What?
If
Internationally?
I'm just looking at total box
It has to be,
office. So
yeah.
yeah, that has to be everything altogether. Because I can't even name 4 people, probably on even the server or the subreddit, that have probably gone and seen it. None too. I feel like I'm the only person that went and saw it out of morbid curiosity. But if it
Yeah.
made $202 million year to date, Exorcist can break 300, 400 million all day. Like,
Mhm.
purely.
I
easily.
think that I don't know. Sometimes I could be wrong, guys, but like I feel like movies like The Nun, which I mean I saw the first one. It's probably one of the worst horror films I've ever
Agreed.
seen in my life. We've talked about this, but like uh, I think The Nun caters more towards a general audience, though. For some
It
reason,
does.
like it's like
That's
they
fair.
see like the spooky nun and they're like, okay, yeah, let's go see it.
Yeah.
Whereas The Exorcist is kind of uh, I mean, it's this
Mm,
huge global phenomenon, but I feel like we're in a weird climate right now where it's like it's just going to be the film fanatics that go see it. I
to a
don't
Yeah.
degree.
know if the general.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
No, I would
I
just
mean,
pose this to you because it's kind of like Will and I were saying. Like, if you go back to the very beginning when we were talking about how it affected us, we were just curious. It was supposed to be scary. You know, one of the scariest
Hmm.
movies ever made. We were told not to watch it, this and that, avoid it, the whole nine yards. So, like, whenever this movie, starts popping out there, people get reactions and word of mouth alone. If it's not scary, I feel like that's what's going to kill it for sure. I feel
Hmm.
like if word of mouth and somebody's like, yeah, it wasn't scary at all, and that's going to be the biggest thing, even though you really can't compare it to the 73 version, people are going to go
yeah.
see this to literally sweat and shit their pants. Like that, to put it plainly, they want to be scared. That's what
And
people
we're
are going to want to
hoping
go
that,
do.
yeah, and we're hoping Blumhouse is aware of this as well. Like, and I think I was talking to you guys about this earlier, is that I think it's important to understand the context of time and
Mm-hmm.
when the original was released, and it had such an impact at the time because things were different back then.
Yep.
I mean, nowadays in 2023, most Western countries, not to get political, but we're much more secular, right, in
Yep.
regards to, you know, beliefs being mainstream, right?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the impact of that film back in the 70s was what it was because of how we were culturally and
Yeah.
how we were
Agreed.
as a country, as a people.
Hmm.
Whereas now in 2023, we're so desensitized to everything. It's our possession films, do they have the same impact nowadays? I think you just really have to go balls to the wall and just pull out all the fucking stops to really make something that people are going to be like, wow, that was literally like I want to be able to walk on out of that theater and say that I felt like they dragged me to fucking hell and back.
Hmm.
Like, I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know how gory this movie's going to be. But I hope they don't rely on the gore too much because it will take away from the character focused story that we got in the original. The things that made the original stand out was that it was so character focused, and then you had those scenes of gore and just the grotesqueness of the whole
Hmm.
thing thrown at you, and that's what was so shocking about it. It's that contrast where you have these intimate scenes of character building and interactions between these characters, and then all of a sudden they're thrown into this fucking nightmare, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I question how well it's going to do initially, and then in the coming weeks, uh, subsequently after it releases. I want to throw some facts at you guys.
Hmm.
So I guess The Pope's Exorcist, which came out earlier this year,
Hmm.
Awful.
it's another possession film. Yeah, I never saw the
Didn't see
movie.
it. Yeah.
That was made on an $18 million budget. It made 53 million.
That's
So,
decent.
And you got Russell Crowe in the lead role too.
Russell Crowe. So, obviously he's got some drawing power, but I mean, that was
Hmm.
Sony. So they're considering that a success, right? I mean, 18 million and 53 million box office is great.
Hmm.
Um, the original Exorcist opened, it made 232 million in 1973 and in 2000, which I guess is when they re-released it
Mm.
theatrically for a stint.
Yeah, for the
So
director's cut.
adjusted for the
Yeah.
director's cut. Yeah, so adjusted, looking at that modern day, that's 1.1 billion. So
Golly.
Jesus.
Is
That's
inflation
I
that
think
crazy.
back? Oh.
Damn.
yeah,
Oh, jeez.
it's still and I want to make sure I'm reading this correctly because I'm just looking at the other movies here because this article, according to this, it's still the biggest grossing R-rated movie of all time
Makes sense.
and adjusted that's domestically at least.
Hmm.
So yeah, I don't know.
We're
I'm
all
just
rooting for
curious.
it. Like I
Yeah.
know
Yeah,
we're
I
all
want
rooting
it to do
for it.
well.
And I think the biggest thing that what you just to piggyback real quick what you said it's a culture change now. We're not living in the same time, but also I think you
Yeah,
were also leaning into this too. There's been so many possession movies since The
there's
Exorcist has
been a
come out,
lot.
like so
Yeah,
many, right? And it's
Yeah.
like the possession aspect isn't
There's not much you can do.
it's not scary. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
scary. What made the original so scary is just like the small little disturbing scenes, and they weren't even like that gory, like the crucifix scene, where she's,
Yeah.
they're opening her legs and stabbing herself with a crucifix. There wasn't a lot of blood, but it's like, holy crap, like that is
It's just
disturbing.
intense. Yeah, it's
Yeah, it's just
intense.
intense. It's emotionally intense, and I think they really need to kind of play off stuff like that, or else they're going to be struggling a little bit after the first
Mhm.
opening week.
I agree
Yeah.
with that. I think they can make it effective, but I think they have to find a way to, as a viewer, get under your skin first and
Hmm.
and really connect you with these characters and really involve you in what's happening before they throw the hellish stuff at you, whether it's the gore or the grotesqueness of it. I think they really need to find a way to make it relatable before they just, if you go in there and they're just throwing, horrible imagery at you and blood and
Hmm.
gore, but you don't care about the characters, it's all for nothing, and that's what the original film does so well.
And word of
Um,
mouth, right, too, like, so, like, people saw the
yeah,
original film, and it was like, "Holy shit,
yeah,
you need to go see this movie," and I
Run
think
and
that
go
this
see it.
movie yeah, I think
yeah,
this movie can maybe do the same thing if people are invested in the characters and there's enough kind of, uh, like you said, not blood and gore, but just, like, some kinda disturbing scenes that stick with you, and people
yeah,
I think word of mouth can honestly have a huge role with this movie where it's like opening week, all the film fanatics go see it, they start telling other people, "You need to go see this movie."
yeah.
Um so, yeah, man, I mean, I think we're all excited for it. I think we all want it to succeed. I can sit here and talk about Exorcist all day, but I know we're already at what are we at? Like almost like an hour and a half, 2
No, we got our final 5 minutes to go ahead and close out with what we're
Okay.
looking forward to, just to get back full circle to the
Mhm.
physical media realm. I know we were talking about it before we went live on this. What are we looking forward to? Moving past a little bit of the believer aspect, but things that are coming out here in the next couple of weeks. For the physical media report, I will say I'm just really looking forward to Megan. I had an absolute joy. Like, I mean, if you can't tell, I tend to like Chucky and stuff. So anything remotely close to that, I tend to get really excited for. Black Phone's coming out in 4K. Hopefully that's solid because Cocaine Bear apparently looks like trash in 4K, which I really didn't think
Ooh,
Oh,
that needed a 4K
wow.
outside of maybe the sound mix.
yeah,
Um, yeah, because like that's one of the things HDR and the sound mixing. It's really never the resolution, especially when you have
Mhm.
CGI bears snorting cocaine. What do you really expect?
yeah.
So,
It was pretty VFX heavy too, which is
yeah,
expected, but yeah,
yeah,
I
and
mean,
most
as
of that's
far as like
finished at 2K.
physical
Yeah,
like
like
physical releases coming up, it's hold on,
Pray
I'm
for
trying to
you.
there's
You're excited for
there's a
Prey.
lot.
Prey is one I'm like super stoked for
Yeah,
because I
Yeah.
freaking loved watching that, and I mean, I this is the first time we're gonna see it on disc, so I mean,
mm,
I'm super stoked. I think I think the transfer has the possibility of like looking at like one of the best transfers of the year, especially because the nighttime scenes, the fire, and
Oh
all that
yeah.
stuff. Like, I think it's gonna look freaking phenomenal. I'm I'm not excited for, but I'm curious into like the whole like Disney Steelbooks. You got Loki coming out and all that, Mando and all that stuff. So I'm curious as to looking into that too. But Prey is probably the biggest one for me coming out for sure that I'm excited for.
Absolutely. What about you, Will?
I got a bunch. I mean, we were talking about that earlier. We were talking about Scream 3, Night of the
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Demons, a little bit more
Oh
boutique
yeah.
stuff for me because I like
Mm-hmm.
that stuff, which I was supposed to get Night of the Demons, I guess, yesterday, but Scream Factory decided to give me 2 copies of Black Christmas instead. So,
That's crazy.
yeah, I'll be looking into that. But yeah, Prey definitely. I want to piggyback off of what you said, Gabe, because I am curious how well these transfers look regarding Prey and some of the Marvel stuff. Because, as we know, Disney has suddenly they've done a 180 and now apparently they're committed to physical media again based on some of their recent press releases. So I'm curious to see how these end up looking and what the extras are like on these discs. So I'll definitely be checking out Prey. I have that pre-ordered. Scream 3, The Mist is another one that I'm
Oh yeah,
looking
the
forward
mist.
to. I'm probably gonna end up getting Black Phone. It's just I've had to be like super selective with what I buy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually skipping Rosemary's Baby,
Oh, I'm
just because
getting
I'm not
that.
a big fan of the
Mm.
I don't really like the cover art, and I feel like they're gonna put out a steelbook for that down the road. So I'm gonna hold
I had the
off
same
for
thought.
the steelbook. I'm just not a fan of the cover art. I love the movie, but
Mm.
Friday the 13th, Megan,
Ooh,
I think I got Megan as well.
Yep.
And then Pumpkinhead, which is also coming out.
Mm.
And you're a fan of that
And
movie,
for
right?
I love Pumpkinhead, dude. I think it's an awesome like Halloween like monster movie. It's
Yeah.
really well done.
Yeah.
I can't say the same for the follow-ups and the sequels, but the first movie is a awesome little horror movie. If you guys are looking for something to watch this fall, definitely check that out. Um, yeah, that's all that's come to mind for me. Terrifier 2 is getting a steelbook if anybody's interested in that.
Oh yeah, I saw
Great
that. Oh,
movie if you haven't
the
seen it.
others is coming out too on Criterion, but
Oh yeah,
I heard it
Oh,
doesn't
Criterion.
have
I
HDR,
was just
which
about to
kind of
say.
Yeah.
oh man, I'm so pissed off.
Well,
I don't know how that works, man.
Apparently,
there's a
that's
whole thing with
director.
Criterion about that, right? Because it
Yeah,
didn't somebody, I don't know if it was Craig or someone else, someone in the Discord posted a
the
clip
reasoning.
of one of the guys from Criterion talking about Dolby
Yeah.
Vision or HDR and how they don't really care for it, I guess. But
Hmm.
No, that was
I haven't looked
actually.
into that whole situation.
I read that this morning before we went live, just for anybody that's curious while they're listening. That's
Mm.
apparently the director, not Criterion, did not
Oh, it's
want that
not
to have HD.
Criterion.
Yeah,
Okay.
it
Oh,
was
okay.
the
Okay.
director apparently didn't want the HDR, which that's the biggest improvement in my personal opinion for 4K. You
Right.
know, otherwise,
Okay.
Yeah,
if Blu-ray had HDR, I would just get a 1080p disc for the
yeah.
most part with HDR. You know, unless it's
Right.
an
Right.
old film, it really doesn't matter. But I mean, Night of the Living Dead still looked great, but would have looked better with HDR in my opinion.
Yeah.
So because black and white tends to look amazing with
Oh yeah.
HDR, but that's the reason. I just wanted to chime in because I found that really weird that a director didn't want HDR.
Well,
That's
Roger
Right.
weird.
Deakins doesn't like HDR either. He's the cinematographer
Mm.
for like Blade Runner. He did Sicario.
Mm.
Weird.
And he says he really doesn't care for it. So there's been debate about that, kind of like, you know, like why wouldn't you utilize it? But and he's one of the honestly, in my personal opinion, he's probably one of the greatest cinematographers like that have, that have worked in the industry. So it's
I'd
interesting
agree.
here's his take on it. He doesn't care for HDR.
Yeah.
Are you guys excited for that Paramount Scares box set? There's a
Not at
lot of
all.
I'm hearing a lot of chatter about that for some
Yeah.
reason.
I mean, I
It's
saw it.
kind of for
I'm kind
me,
of
it's
like,
like yeah,
I mean,
Nope.
it's like, I mean, the it's weird titles that they chose for the first one too.
it
It's like a
is. That's
mixed
what I was
bag
gonna
of
say.
just like, yeah, it's like,
Yeah,
why? Who chooses this
yeah.
stuff?
I,
I have all of them. That's
Yeah, I
why,
have most of
unless it's
them
that
too, and I'm
mystery
like,
title.
yeah, I was gonna say I own half of them anyway. That's like I was like,
hmm
why are people like excited about this? Like
yeah,
I'm
what?
not dogging anybody. I just didn't understand what because I've heard a lot of chat about it, like on the Blu-ray forums and like on some of the other Discord channels I'm in, like the
hmm
Steelbook channel. A lot of people are like mentioning it, and I'm like, first of all, it's well, not that they only talk about Steelbooks there, but I just found it weird that like it seemed like it was getting some traction. I just didn't expect that to really be one that people would be talking about. But
I think it's
I don't
great
know.
if you don't have them. You know what I mean? If you don't have most of those titles and you actually wanted to get them at some
Oh, for
point,
sure.
I mean, I think that's
Yeah,
a good set to get. But if well,
yeah.
I know a lot of us probably own at least half of those titles already.
Yeah. I wanna grab the others too, but I'm probably gonna wait for the November sale like you guys I
Oh
usually
yeah,
do
the
that
November.
anyway,
So
so
yeah, that's true.
July and November for me for Criterion, but yeah, it'd be nice to watch it around this time of year, but I mean, that'd be a nice watch for November anyway.
hmm
Yeah. And with
Cool.
that being said, Will, do you want to go ahead and close this out?
Yeah, we appreciate everybody tuning in for our first episode here. We had a lot of fun talking about The Exorcist. We could all go on for hours and hours more, but I don't think anybody wants to listen to us for that long. But like I
Yeah.
said earlier when we introed, there's a lot of stuff that we want to do with this. There's so much that we want to talk about, and we're so happy that we can finally get this off the ground and all come together and make it work. So for anybody out there that's listening and discovers this, stay tuned. You can find us on Discord. Just be on the lookout. We're gonna try to do this, if not bi-weekly, at least once a month. And as we said, in addition to just the standard podcast that you're listening to now, we're gonna do a lot of other things regarding physical media reviews, unboxing, a lot of solo stuff that we'll all be working on. So yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff that we have planned, and we're super excited to get into it moving forward. We hope everybody's ready to come along for the ride. It's gonna be fun.
Yep. And you guys can catch us kind of like what Will said. You can catch us on the 4K Blu-ray Reddit. You can catch us on the server as well. The link to the server is on the Reddit page. And we're looking forward to giving you guys more content.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys want to chat with any of us individually, my at for pretty much anything is Shurikang. You can find me pretty much anywhere with that username. And otherwise, you'll see me talking about the most Z-list horror movies in the server or even the subreddit occasionally. But we're all pretty active. So, yeah, stay tuned for some exciting stuff and look forward to hearing our blessed voices a lot more from the heavens above.
Catch you guys later.
Thank you guys. Take
Thank
it
you guys
easy,
for
everybody.
tuning in.